This podcast is part of the SJ Network. Go to s-j-network.com for more great podcasts or contact information on publicist Steve Joyner.
Billy, did you take out the trash?
I will, after I finish listening to the Snowman in the Morning show.
That's a good podcast. I was quite the athlete when I was younger.
I didn't know that. What sport did you do?
I was a professional wrestler. I was great at throwing my opponents through tables.
You were? Well then, I better take the trash out. It's not going to take itself out, you know.
Works every time. Maybe I should tell the Sherpa, so I can get better jokes. Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is being brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now Mr. Bruce will lead you into the Sherpa Chalet. As a reminder, please don't disturb the yak.
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa.
Hey there, Rebels. You are listening to Too Many Podcasts, and it's me, Jim, the podcast Sherpa. Welcome to the show, and it's day 2 of Sports Week. And today's a fun show. Well, they're all fun shows this week, but my guest today is a guy who hosts a podcast and broadcasts on the radio as a sports announcer. Very knowledgeable and so much fun. We had a blast doing this interview, and I'm sure you want to know who he is.
Who's our guest today, Sherpa?
His name is Brian Snow, and he is the host of the Snowman in the Morning podcast. And he's a great guy. We had a lot of fun talking, so much laughing. Well, before we started our interview, I started counting down using silly voices, and Brian just lost it, which is why he's giggling at the beginning of the interview. But we had a lot of fun, and check out the stories that he has to tell. He's definitely a guy with a passion for sports and a passion for life. And like I said, so much fun. I'll just stop saying so much fun because you're going to get to listen to the interview with Brian Snow, otherwise known as Snowman in the Morning. He's laughing already. We're here in the conference room at the Sherpa Chalet in the middle of the summer. I'm talking to a guy named Snowman. I'm trying to figure that one out. He's already giddy. At some point, he's going to talk. He's just going to stop laughing. But his name is Brian Snow. He has a podcast called Snowman in the Morning. Do you have a jingle?
No, I have a tagline. It's the best sports show you heard.
I like it. So, welcome to the show, Brian. How's it going?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm having a blast already because we spent 10 minutes laughing before we came on.
That's right. We've got podcaster giggles.
I'm loving this already.
Okay, let's start on a really serious subject. Tell me all about yourself, Brian.
Well, the way you were counting down using the different voices, that's kind of how I am. I'm silly. I love having fun. I still love Looney Tunes, and I just turned 48 last week. I love the old school cartoons. I love old school video games. I'm a sports nerd. Happily married, living here in North Carolina, and about to celebrate my 25th year in broadcasting.
Wow. So you started up apparently in radio?
Yep. College student radio, as a matter of fact, Chicago State University. And here's how I did my first game in 1995, totally off of an idea. My friend Kevin had checked out a camera from the speech and theater department, and I asked him if he can attach a microphone with that. And he said, yeah, what do you have in mind? So we walked over to the gym, and the coach at the time was one Craig Hodges. And he said, if you need to film, yeah, go ahead. So I raced into the bathroom. I changed into a shirt and tie, and without any notes or anything like that, that was my first call. And off to the races I went.
That's the big phrase today, isn't it? We're off to the races.
Off to the races. We were off to the races.
So did you ever do TV also, or you just did?
I did. I've done TV a couple of times. When I lived in a small town called Jasper, Indiana, they had me radio, television, and internet. So I've done video broadcasts before. Nothing new to me. I've done when I first got started, we were doing simulcast, video and audio. So I'm pretty much used to it. Besides, when you grew up watching Michael Jordan play on Sports Channel, and they had their simulcast with my favorite voice of all time, Jim Durham, you pretty much get used to the culture very quickly.
Now, when you grew up, did you have any sports aspirations? Did you want to be an athlete, or did you ever think about it?
I wanted to play I wanted to play baseball. I just never got good at it. I wanted to play a few sports. I just never got good at it. So I figure I'll do the next best thing and put a microphone in front of my face.
That works. You weren't like me, like you played 1 year of Little League and they put you in right field because they knew, well.
They figured it out quick. I tried out for Jackie Robinson Little League in Chicago, but I got the feeling very quickly, no, I'm not going to do good at this because I didn't practice. And school was the big thing for me because of my parents. They really wanted me to get an education, and I love them for that. But I figure I can satisfy my craving for sports another way, like I said. And I figured if I can't play it, I'll call it.
Did you ever do like color commentary or anything like that in your career?
I have, but I've been more of a play-by-play announcer for most of my career.
Okay. For mostly baseball or any sports?
Let's see. What sports have I done play-by-play for? Baseball, football, basketball, done volleyball. I've done soccer, and I got a funny story about that. I've done hockey, and I've done lacrosse.
Okay, we got to hear the soccer story now that you give me the build-up.
All right, 2006, I was in Chicago covering Whitney Young High School. They gave me a chance to cover all their sports, and the girls' soccer team had gotten to one level shy of the state final. And I didn't have access to a car at the time. And I had to go from the south side way up north. I had to catch 2 trains and 3 buses, and I had to start my trek at 2:00 in the afternoon. And by the time I was walking to the stadium, it was pouring rain. And I was so afraid of my equipment in my backpack getting soaked. It didn't. So I'm way at the top of the stadium calling this soccer match, and I figure we'll get this over quickly and I'll go home. No. The soccer match went 2 overtimes, full overtimes. And I'm watching the rain come down, and I'm thinking, I got to go home in this stuff. I'm going to wind up peeling my shirt and tie off when I get in the house. And true to form, when I got home, I peeled off my shirt and tie and the rest of my clothes when I got in the house. And Whitney Young lost 1-0 in 2 overtimes.
Oh,
That hurt. That hurt.
That makes for one long day, Brian.
Oh my gosh. That was a 14-hour day, and 12 of it I spent in travel.
Yeah. Ooh. I think a lesser man would have just been like, let's just make up a score and say, yeah, they won.
The hell with it. Yep. They just said the hell with it, climbed down at halftime and left.
The last couple of minutes of the last quarter, you could have been like, just draw your own conclusions. I'm out of here.
Believe me, when I saw the rain pelting down and I heard it on the roof, I said, I want to get out of here so bad, but I can't. I got to finish this game. 2 reasons I stayed and finished. 1, I was getting paid for it. And 2, the staff there kept bringing me food.
Okay.
They kept bringing me food and drinks. So they asked me, would you like anything to drink? I said, what's the cost? They said, well, you're media, so we'll bring the food to you. I said, well, bring me something light. Yeah, It kept coming.
Their version of light was a 5-course meal.
Basically. And because it was a state playoff game, it was basically mandated that they had to have, food for the media. And since I was one of only 3 media members there covering that match who braved the rain, not to mention the wind, and it was 60 degrees that day.
Oh, cow.
So imagine 60 degrees and the wind was 20 miles an hour? And I heard the rain on the roof and I'm going, I have to go home in this. I'm going to be beat up. I'm going to be soaked and I got to get up in the morning. Yipe.
As you're telling this story, I'm just kind of imagining just being stuck in that, just like, I could have been an accountant.
The kids on both sides were great. And I got the same question from members of both teams who saw me climbing down out of the press box and the rain's coming down. I didn't have an umbrella and they're going, you sat through that whole thing? Yep. And I don't have a voice, nor do I have a microphone because it's getting soaked right now.
Oh my.
Yeah. It was crazy. That's one of many crazy stories I have over 20 plus years.
What was your first sport when you were growing up? Was it baseball, you said, or because you wanted to be a ball player?
I grew up loving baseball. Baseball was the first sport I got hooked on because my dad watched it with me, my grandpa watched it with me, and so many of my friends in my old neighborhood would watch baseball with me. We'd all sit around and watch baseball, talk about who's the best, and this was the time we grew up. And one of my favorite teams I watched in the mid-'80s was the New York Mets because one of my favorite sluggers was Darryl Strawberry. And I wanted to be Darryl Strawberry, but I couldn't hit left-handed. I was a right-handed power hitter. And then come the 90s, my favorite slugger went from Darryl Strawberry and later Ken Griffey Jr., who I still love, to a fellow named Frank Thomas, who played with my Chicago White Sox for 16 years. And when I saw that big man hit and spray the ball all over the field, I said, I think I have a new favorite now. And my dad noticed it. So he would get me tickets to White Sox games, and I would just love seeing Frank Thomas hit.
I know he has an impressive record too, so there was definitely a lot for you to see along the way. Now, let's talk a little bit about your podcast. Hey, how about that? I don't know why I would forget that, considering you're sitting there with headphones on. You'd think that would be a good visual clue for the Sherpa.
Oh, my gosh.
We're going to be sending some air down to Brian in a little bit.
If my wife was looking at me right now, she would just say, breathe, because she would do the same thing. She'll say something and I'll hear it and I'll lose it. I would be laughing so hard I would forget to breathe, but she would just tell me to breathe. About my show, I started it in 2013, and I always talk sports with my friends. I appeared on a couple of shows in Chicago, and someone said, "Why don't you start your own show?" I said, "Because the radio stations won't hire me because I actually know what I'm doing." And I said, "Look, you got the internet at your disposal. Figure it out." Wait a minute. They're right. I can figure this out. So I had a mixer, I had a laptop, I had a headset microphone, and I said, you know what? I'm going to try it. And October 1st, 2013, Snowman in the Morning was born.
Do you remember your first guest?
I didn't get a guest for, I'd say, 2 weeks. And one of my first guests was a guy named Gary Rima, who is the voice of the University of Northern Iowa. And I was told and advised, keep all your guests to 15 minutes, keep your segments to 15 minutes. Yeah, I get my friend Gary on the phone. We're on the phone for a half hour. And I didn't care. He is a very, very dear friend. I've also had Dave Bennett, voice of Northwestern, Pat Hughes, voice of the Cubs, and a few other lots of other broadcasters, and some I'm reconnecting with that I'm going to put in my month of legends, a little something I'm working on for my 25th anniversary. And it's my wife's idea. And I'm enacting it. A lot of stuff that goes on into producing the show, but it's fun. I've learned to be more consistent with it. I've learned how to get better guests, getting a team together to help promote it, to help put it out there. I just brought on a co-host to help race through the show. And, he and my co-host and I would get talking. The next thing you know, I'm looking, my wife's telling me, go to a break, because she's my executive producer. And she'll tell me, go to a break. And I would miss it. And I take a sip of water and I look up and she just has this look and she'll give me a finger point and I'm going, oh, I got to go to a break quick. And I go to a break and she starts cracking up.
So when the wife speaks,
yeah, I have to listen, especially, I know a lot more about the production, but she's got the timing down pat for me.
Okay.
And she learned that really quick, being with me in the booth, calling football. She knows my out cues. And when I go to a break, she'll just point to a big bottle of water that I'd have in the booth with me. And she'll go, drink quick. And I'll drink something. And when I do have my breaks, I make sure this is full so I can do that, because most of the breaks I take are 180 seconds. So I make sure I have everything ready, make sure the next segment's ready, and just go from there.
So walk me through doing like play-by-play. I mean, what do you just have like a bunch of stats in front of you? Is it just, or you just basically calling the action as everything's going along, or is it a little combination of both?
It's a combination of both, because when I do my research for football, it starts that Monday. When I have a Friday night game, my research starts that Monday with requests going out to the coaches for their roster, updated roster, their starting lineups, starting offense, starting defense, starting special teams, any stats that they can give me. And throughout the week, I just put it together. And by Wednesday, I'm taping my coaches' interviews, putting the rest of my pregame together so that when I arrive at the stadium on Friday, I just set up, plug everything in, make sure it works. And as I said, since my wife's been with me, she's been going through my checklist with me, and it'll be a 7:00 kick. So, and I would have an hour-long pregame show. So once 6:00 hits, push a button and pregame show's rolling.
Boom. Apart from like the rainy, the monsoon soccer game, were there any other ones that kind of stick out in your time in broadcasting?
Let's see. I've been snowed out of a high school baseball game in Gary, Indiana. And this is after the home team put 9 runs on the board, and one more, it would have been a 10-run rule. I was stuck on the roof in a summer monsoon in September in a game that went 6 overtimes for a football game. I lost my umbrella, which flew off the roof in a 15-mile-an-hour wind. The field was a mud pit, and it was one of the greatest games I ever watched and one of the greatest games I ever called, because it was 2 ranked teams in the state of Illinois going at it. And they both play in the Chicago Catholic League. It was 14-14 at the end of regulation. It wound up 51-48 after 6 overtimes.
Wow.
I climbed back downstairs, and like I said, it was a Catholic League game. I climbed back downstairs. I was so tired. I was so spent, but I was so happy to see a game like that. And a couple of the parents heard me, and they said, "You did a great job." I said, "Can I have a favor?" I said, "Yeah, give me a beer." And they put a beer in my coat pocket, and I went home. I've had that. I've had a 13-inning baseball game, which was only supposed to go 7. That was the first game of a doubleheader. It went 13 innings because no one scored after the 4th. And in the middle of that game that my friend Mark and I were doing, it was in Joliet, Illinois. There were windows behind us, and they were getting the stadium ready for that baseball season in Joliet. Yeah. My microphone picked up everything, and somebody was squeegeeing the windows. And it frightened the daylights out of us. We both turned around and went, "What?" 2 of the best that happened were in 2012. And anybody that is familiar with YouTube, and you should be, just search my name, Brian Snow, and search the term Marist Miracles. Because there are two games that happened when I was covering games for High School Cube at the time with Marist High School in Chicago. The first one was a regional championship game in which Marist erased an 11-point deficit in the final 5 minutes and won it with 2 seconds left. Instead of going for the tie, they went for the win. Lexus Williams, who I affectionately call Hot Rod Williams, buried a 3 from the right wing. So I had that one. And then 3 days later, they were playing. That was against the number 6 team in the nation. And then in the state, I beg your pardon. And then they played the number 4 team in the state. And they were down 15 with 2.5 minutes to go, wiped that out, tied the game with a layup. And I went nuts again with 1.4 left. And they won that game in overtime, 68-63. And after the first one, I got an email from my boss that said, your clip of excitement is headed to ESPN. I fell back to sleep again. And suddenly I sat up and I went, what? And I called my boss and I said, don't mess with me. She says, I'm not kidding. They requested it. It was sent to ESPN. What I didn't know is that the night before, that Sunday night, it had made Deadspin. And of course, they put their spin in it. And I love the guys at Deadspin. And I didn't know what kind of a storm it would set off. I didn't know what to expect. And that was after the first one. I got calls from 7 different stations across the country, all wanting to interview me. 3 of them were in Chicago. And my friend Josh got a hold of me that morning. Got a hold of me one morning. It was like 6:30 in the morning. I am dead to the world. I hear my phone and I look at the readout and I see it's him. I see it's my friend Josh. And I said, I better pick this up. I picked it up. And before I can even say, how are you doing? He says, you need to call WSCR right now and surprise them. Why the hell am I going to do that? Because they're talking about you. So everybody's been talking about me for the last 2 days. So what? Just call them. Trust me. Yeah, he was right. I called him and surprised the daylights out of him.
It's the guy, the excited guy.
I've talked with Boomer Esiason at the WFAN. This is when Boomer and Carton was popular. This is 2012. Dory Monson, KIRO in Seattle. And that was after the first one. After the second one, I get an email from a producer of the Dan Patrick Show. And I looked at that email and I'm going, you're kidding. I wrote him back and I said, okay. I figured I'd play along, see what happens. Wrote him back. He writes me back 30 seconds later, we're calling you at 10:30 your time. Be ready to pick up the phone and talk to Dan Patrick. Don't fool with me. We're not fooling with you. We want you on. Well, I have that interview saved. I got all the interviews from that year saved, and it's like one of my hallmarks in my 25 years. I have fun doing what I'm doing. Now I'm moving up, going to the college level, the junior college level here in North Carolina. There's a semi-pro league that wants me to cover them. I had a chance to cover a Charlotte Hornets game with the San Antonio Spurs in town. And that story, my friend Bill Schoenig, who's the radio voice of the Spurs, I got a hold of him and I said, I finally moved. I'm finally in North Carolina. And then he said, that's great. You'll have to come by when we play the Hornets. A couple weeks later, I said, let me know when you're in town and I'll swing by the Spectrum Center. He says, I'll do better than that. I'll drop you $100 if you're my stats guy for the night. You're on. So I got that one.
Can't be an offer like that, right?
Can't.
Well, that's great that, your enthusiasm for sports got at least that recognition, and that sort of excitement. Because like you said, people should be excited for events like that and games like that, because sometimes you get those one in a lifetime events and plays and, and what have you that you may never see again, or you have to wait for a long time for it to happen again.
So you have to wait a long time to see it again.
If you were going to interview, and I'll put you to work a little bit here, Brian, 3 sports legends, living or dead, anywhere, any sport, who would be your choice?
Michael Jordan, Joe Montana, and Jim Durham.
Look at that. He just didn't even hesitate.
And I'm working on the first 2. I am seriously working on the first 2, trying to figure out how to get them on my show. Yeah, but those would be the 3.
Well, I guess you have the Chicago background too. I'm sure Jordan may be like,
You know what? If I ever got the chance to interview MJ, I'd clear my whole day, because it would just take one question to get it started. And the next thing I know, hours would pass. My wife would have a big cheesy grin on her face. I would try to hold my grin in, because I'd have to, I got to keep it calm. I couldn't fanboy out with Michael Jordan in front of me, which I did when I met him, because I was calling the game for his son, Marcus, who had transferred to Whitney Young. And my partner was telling me, Michael's going to be in the building tonight. I said, nah, not a chance. Yeah, right. I go over to say hi to the principal, and who do I bump into? Michael Jeffrey Jordan. He stuck his hand out, because I was also the PA announcer that night. He stuck his hand out, and he said, good job. Yeah, I melted. I went back to my seat, and I told Paul, you're calling the 3rd quarter. You're not talking, are you? Nope. You're not washing your hand, are you? Nope.
Were you doing like the Ralph Cramden thing? Were you going humming?
For the entire 8 minutes, for the entire 3rd quarter, Paul would look at me and he'd laugh when we go to a break. He said, are you going to say anything? I'll try. I'm not going to guarantee anything. Eventually I did. And eventually I did get my senses back for the 4th quarter. But that 3rd quarter, I'm just sitting there going, I shook Michael's hand. What? I shook Michael's hand, and I'm calling games for his son. Jim Durham, you'd be proud of me.
That's pretty remarkable, especially not too many people get to meet their sports heroes and have that kind of awe, I guess, especially when you don't expect it. It's like, and then he's saying something nice to you, he's paying you a compliment. So then it's probably like a double bonus for you.
There were 100,000 compliments I wanted to pay him, but when he paid me that compliment, that's all I needed. My day was made. My life was made. I can go home. I'm fine.
Yeah, I think I probably been like, and he'd be like, yeah, I get that all the time.
That's how I was driving home. Paul called me while I was on the road. I drove from Chicago to Gary, because I was living in Gary, Indiana at the time. Paul called me and he goes, can you talk yet? No, call me tomorrow. Click. He called me later that night and left a voicemail, and he couldn't say a word because he was laughing so hard. And I woke up laughing also, remembering what happened.
I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for you that you get that interview. And
I'm trying. I'm trying.
You're going to probably need a lot of those big cups of water, though, I think.
Up to here.
They'll hook up a little IV.
Mm-hmm. I'd have to get an IV. Give me an IV full of liquid, please. Why? I'm interviewing Michael Jordan today. It's going to take all day. I need the liquid. I need the moisture, please. You know what my wife would do? My wife would bring in like 2 big bottles of water, and she'll just put them at my side and smile at me, and then give me a hug, and she'll just wink and go, just in case. Hell.
We're mentioning your wife. Well, how did you meet your wife?
Met her online, actually.
Really?
And the first time I talked to her, I met her 2 years ago this month. I was calling a game. I was doing a football game. And I said, I thought to myself, I want to talk to her, but I wanted to do something unique. And then I figured if she's going to know what I do, then I have to, she has to hear it. So I dialed a number, I put the phone in my headset, and she heard me. And then she recognized what I was doing, and she starts laughing. And all I had to hear was her laugh. And my brain went dead. My heart jumped out of my chest. And I said, okay, I found the person who I need. I just had to hear her laugh. And when I went to a break, I said, hi. And she's still laughing. she's going, well, this is unique.
I'm hoping that like you didn't get the two conversations confused. That's a beautiful reception in the 20-yard line, and how about a nice dinner tomorrow night? And you
know what? If I repeat a call out loud here in the house, she'll either repeat it or she'll walk behind me when I don't realize she's in the same room with me. She'll just walk up behind me and go, nuh-uh, and just distract me. And the first time she did that, I took the dog out and I was repeating a call by Vince Scully from 85 Cardinals and Dodgers. And I said, and he hits one to deep left field, and that one is gone. I walk by my wife. She goes, nuh-uh, and I lost it.
Do you have like a catchphrase when you do in your play-by-play?
I got so many of them that I use, and I have borrowed shamelessly from others. I just have too many of them.
Get the little Rolodex. Okay, this one, I'll go for this one. And
it depends on the game. One that I've used the last couple of years for a fantastic play came courtesy of Steve Rabel, the voice of the Seattle Seahawks. I saw a running catch made like Willie Mays style over the shoulder. And the next thing I blurted out was, holy catfish. It stuck. It stuck. I said it during a boys basketball game, and the kids were repeating it to me. The parents were repeating it to me.
The birth of a catchphrase.
I borrowed a catchphrase from one of my favorite announcers. It stuck with the kids. It stuck with the parents, and that was that.
So how are you handling all of the sports stuff when there's not so many sports going on because of this little pandemic thing that people are talking about?
On this laptop of mine, I've got so many old school games to keep me busy. And I do my show every day. I help my wife out around the house. So I'm good. I'm good, especially with the way the NBA is, save a couple of teams that I follow. I'll take the Jordan era, Magic era, Bird era of the NBA any day of the week.
All right. So because we are both podcasters, and I'm sure in all this time that you've been doing your podcast, there are probably some that you like to listen to. So what are some of the ones that you like to listen to? Are they all sports podcasts, or do you usually listen to other stuff to kind of take your mind off of it?
Most of them are sports podcasts. One off the board podcast I listen to. My wife got me hooked on. There's a YouTube series called My Little Homestead, and they accompany it with My Little Podcast, and she got me hooked on that. And now I'm listening as intently as she is, and they'll say something funny and we'll both start laughing. So there's that. Sometimes I listen to Joe Rogan, but most of the podcasts I listen to are sports podcasts.
We have a portion of the show and we call it shameless self-promotion.
Shameless self-promotion. Shameless self-promotion.
Now, this is where you get to let everybody know where they can reach you, where they can follow you, anything that you'd like to make people aware of. And it's all yours.
Yeah. All my social media for my show is official SIT Morn. That's OFFICIALSIT MS and Mary ORN, short for Snowman in the Morning. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can hear me every morning beginning at 10 a.m. on FullPressRadio.com, SportsCarolinaMonthly.com, and SDMSportsNet.com/radio. It's 2 hours. It'll take you from 10 to noon. So it's at the bottom of the morning. And sports and life and entertainment all intertwined. And also, I got 2 links where I'm doing some fundraising to keep the show going. You can help out at patreon.com/SIT Morning or anchor.fm/official SIT Morn. And I got my first subscriber through Anchor, and I got my first one through Patreon. My goal is to get 400. Hell, I'll change that. 500. I want to get 500 subscribers and 500 monthly subscribers. People saying, "Oh, you won't be able to do it." I gave myself a goal of Labor Day, and I intend to get it done. So, with you helping out, those are the two links: Patreon.com/SIT Morning and Anchor.fm/official SIT Morning. That's where you can become a monthly contributor.
I was just thinking of something. I've had a couple of guests on, and usually I'll name drop in the title of the episode, even though the celebrity doesn't appear on the show or anything like that. Like I had one, I've actually had two that mentioned Joe Rogan, even though Joe Rogan has never been a guest, although he would probably just crush me in his bicep, if he ever was, through the computer. And one with Howard Stern. I should give a shout out to Michael Jordan and see if it'll catch his attention somewhere on a Google search or something like that.
I hope it does. I hope it does. I will say I have had Super Bowl champion Lee Woodall, played with the 49ers. I had him on recently. I've also had Richmond Webb from the Dolphins, played in the 90s. Glenn Parker, offensive guard with the Bills. I had him on recently. Gene Banks, former Bull, former Spur. He's coming on at a later date. Glenn Parker's coming back. So I'm building the library.
That sounds like a lot of fun. So if you guys like your sports, this is one of the guys that you should be listening to, the Snowman in the Morning, Brian Snow. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And now it's time for Sherpa Suggestions.
For today's Sherpa Suggestions, I figured since Brian is such a huge Michael Jordan fan, I would recommend some podcasts that have to do with Michael Jordan. And I actually found a few, believe it or not. So here are some Michael Jordan podcasts to check out if you, just like Brian, are a fan of Michael Jordan. We have Bulls Gold, NBA History, Michael Jordan Era, and more in all airness. Get it? Get it? Bullish, a Chicago Bulls show. The Chicago Six Times. And the Bulls Outsiders podcast, which is about each episode of The Last Dance, which was the documentary about Michael Jordan. Okay, now that I've promoted Michael Jordan all this time, I think as payback, I don't want anything. I just want him to appear on Brian's show just so Brian can go hamana, 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 hamana. Hey, Rebels, and thank you so much for listening to today's episode with Brian Snow, the Snowman in the Morning. And a very special thanks to Brian for coming on the show and having some laughs. And we had a lot of laughs, definitely. So definitely check out his podcast, please. And if you like this show, you can get this on your favorite podcast app if it's not already on there, or you can listen at my website, Sherpalution.com. And people who've been here know this one, but Sherpalution is the word that you need to know if you want to follow me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Just type in Sherpalution and boom, you'll see what's going on with all the shows, and you'll hear about the exciting interviews that I've had right after I have them. And also, if you follow on the website, you'll see that there's a page that actually gives you the schedule for the month as to what guests will be on the show. And not only that, there's a link to what's called the Sherpa Shop, where you can do some online shopping. And there's over 100 stores you can shop from. And while you're doing all that shopping, you can help raise a little money for charity. Check out the link at sherpalution.com/about.html to find out more. Okay, Mr. Bruce, I'm heading to the showers. If you can, please show everybody the door. See you guys tomorrow. We will be talking with JB Ellis. Viva la Sherpalution, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpalution. Viva la Sherpalution. Oh. Yell, come back now, you hear?